Okay, Bart, looking forward to your talk today on your adventures and experiences and lessons from ultra cycling. I'm going to hand over the floor to yourself. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Niall, and thanks for the introduction, and thanks for joining the talk, everyone. Well, I'm going to tell you something about basically my hobby, but first I will give you a short introduction of myself, and then ending up with what I'm doing as a hobby, endurance cycling and endurance racing, and sharing some of the learnings that I got, and also trying to connect that again to my, well, I would say normal life, because some of these ultra endurance events can be quite to the extreme part. So first off, well, I'm based in the Netherlands, Amsterdam. I was born and raised in the east of the country, and well, almost naturally, I think most Dutch people do ride bikes quite a lot for normal stuff, go to school, go to shop, go to friends and family. So that's not out of the ordinary. I think the Netherlands is one of the countries in the world which has more bikes than people. So that's more or less what we do around here. And then later on, I sort of pushed it to a bit further. Outside of the cycling events that I'm doing, I'm an entrepreneur. So I live in Amsterdam with my wife and 2 kids. And I'm an entrepreneur with GuruScan. And with GuruScan, we connect people and expertise within organizations based on the collective social network. So it's more or less, if you're thinking about tools and applications, it's sort of a combination of Wikipedia, which allows people to join and write content and write sensible information for themselves. A combination of that with LinkedIn, which allows people to connect and collaborate and find peers and find experts, but then all within an organization. Well, let me get back to the cycling. The endurance cycling or ultra cycling, I would say the sort of cutoff point would be 1,000 kilometers. So if you're talking about ultra cycling or ultra racing, it's everything above 1,000 kilometers would more or less classify as an ultra cycling tour or an ultra cycling race. And again, that's also maybe an interesting difference. There's difference between tours, which are more or less relaxed. There's no competitive aspect. It's just like an achievement. So you try to make it to the end, and you're allowed to ride in groups. You're allowed to ride with others. There's some sort of stuff available at stops. There's maybe you can sleep, maybe you can eat something. And in races, generally there's not much available, and then it's called unsupported solo endurance racing. A whole lot of things, which basically means that you're on your own. You have to do it. You have to ride it with your bike on your own. You're not allowed to draft. You're not allowed to ride with others. You should solve all your problems. If you run a flat, you cannot borrow a tire from or a tube from someone else. You have to fix it yourself. But you are allowed to buy stuff which is commercially available. So which is also available to all of the others in that same race. So that means that you can go to a shop, you can go to a hotel, you can go to a bed and breakfast, you can go to a bike mechanic if you broke something down, that's all right. What you cannot do is say, well, my aunt lives on this route, so I'll just pop into my aunt's house and have a night there. That's not allowed, because that's a advantage that you would have then over all of the other competitors, and that would make it an unfair challenge because the others cannot use that that place at your aunt because they don't know where it is and where to go. So that's basically the difference between tours and races. I tend to do roughly 1 race a year, and I do 1 or 2 tours a year. On this size, I do other reasonably long stuff like 300, 400, 500, 600 kilometer rides. But that's generally done in one go, so without sleep. And 1,000 kilometers plus, then you generally need to also incorporate some sort of rest or sleeping time into your ride, and that makes it more challenging. So what what I learned. Well, maybe it's short. I recap. So how I got started. I got started with first just as a hobby with the racing bike, going around town like after work for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. Then gradually building that up to like doing with friends like 150 kilometers, like say for all the English people, 100 miles. That's the like a real century ride, like doing 100 miles. That's some sort of a like challenge you want to get, and then you do another one and another one, and then at one point I cycled around the IJsselmeer. That's, if you look at the map of the Netherlands, it's the really big lake in the middle. You can cycle around it, and it's a ride which is roughly 300 kilometers. So a little bit short of 200 miles, and that's really when I found out like, wow, this is like this longer distances, like further than you've ever done before, like 300 kilometers, like a really long ride. It takes you the better part of your day, and I really like that. I really like it takes the stress off your average speed, or you don't feel like you need to like ride as fast as you can. So your intensity of your riding goes down a little bit, because if you ride really intense and really hard, you just cannot sustain that. So you need to take breaks, you need to stop, you need to resupply yourself while you're doing it. That's when I got the hang of that. And then I found, I think I found it on Facebook. I found a race called the Transcontinental Race. It's been well, actually created by Mike Hall, who's a famous long distance cyclist. And he basically started with Transcontinental for Europe. So starting from England, from London, and then riding all the way to Istanbul, literally just trans the European continent. And over time, it changed a bit, but still every year it's roughly the same. It's more or less going transcontinental. It has been going east to west as well. Last year it started in Bulgaria actually, and went all the way back to Brest in France. And the basic setup is really simple. It's solo unsupported, so you cannot draft. You have to make your own route. You get 3 or 4 checkpoints which you need to go to, so you know more or less where you need to be. But planning your route in between is all up to you. You must make sure you get there. You must make sure you have places to stay. You must make sure you have supplies or spare parts, whatever you need. Everything is up to you. And in general, it turns out that you make routes that are roughly 4,000 kilometers. So some people make really short routes, but then with a lot of climbing in it, and then they tend to be like 3,800, 3,900 kilometers. Some people make them a little bit longer, it's 4,100, but it's roughly 4,000 kilometers. I saw that online and I thought, wow, this looks like something I've never done before, and I didn't even know it existed. It sounds so crazy, but still also tempting to go do it. So then I signed up, and it's not you sign up and you get the place, but there was some sort of a some sort of lottery. You needed to have some luck to be getting a place to start. And I thought, well, I just sign up. Maybe I'll probably not even get a place to start. So it's they favor the less represented groups. So women generally always get a place. People from outside of Europe generally always get a place. Well, I don't qualify for any of those groups. So just to give you a slight idea. So I thought, well, I will not be selected anyway. And of course, well, as the story has to go, I got a place, and then that first I was delighted I got a place. Then it freaked me out that I had to do like this this 4,000 kilometer race. So I got started, and actually then I would say that's also the first lesson that I learned. It's to be prepared. So to be as prepared as you can. So read whatever you can, study whatever you can, search whatever you can, use the tools that are available. There are a ton of different tools and materials available. There's race reports from people who did that same race the year before or 2 years before. There's Google Maps, there's like all kind of route planning solutions out there. So definitely be prepared and use all those tools. Use Street View to find what places look like. You use, well, tons of different things that you can find and read, and also read between the lines if you read race reports. I would say that would be the number one lesson. So be prepared, be as prepared as you can. Then again, a 4,000 kilometer race, you cannot prepare for every single kilometer. So you will have to make like jumps and say, well, I'll go from that city to that city. This road looks relatively okay. So I'm 30 kilometers ahead. And now what will I do at that city? What should I take note of? What should I search for? And because you're traveling in different countries, you also have to sort of work with different languages, try and find well, solutions, or find stores, or find bike shops. For instance, in the Netherlands, that's no problem, but finding bike shops in Romania, finding bike shops in Hungary, that was quite a challenge. So that would be number one. And I think, well, it's stating the obvious to do that in your normal life as well. Then the next one would be to be flexible. And be flexible is, to me, it's one thing is that you can prepare to be flexible. So bringing different clothes to suit different occasions, like heat, sun, rain, cold. So your preparations can help you to be flexible. Your preparations, what spare parts do you bring? What equipment do you bring that can help you to be flexible? If you bring a sleeping bag, that helps you to be flexible because you don't have to rely on hotels. You can sleep outside if you need to. That can all help you. But being flexible is, to me, is even more, it's also related to a mental state of mind. Things will turn out not as expected. Things will change. Things will, maybe things will break down. Maybe your bike breaks down. Maybe something breaks down. Maybe your preparation failed anyway. There's tons of different examples. Well, some examples are not from myself, but from others that I've learned from. So that's it. Those are the best examples. You don't have to suffer them, but you can still learn from them. So there's this cycling app called Strava, and you can see heat maps of where people actually have been cycling before. It's a really handy tool that you can use if you need to plan like cycling routes in places you've never been before, because you can see, well, people have actually used their bike there. So it's probably safe, and it's probably a road that you can go. Well, a friend of mine used that to plan some routes in Eastern Europe, and then he forgot to switch off the mountain bike category. So he ended up in the dark, in the middle of the night, with his bike, with all the bags on it, in a mountain bike trail, which he had to walk for, I think it was like 10 kilometers in pitch black night on a mountain bike trail, which wasn't really suited for his kind of use that he intended. So he tried, and he was, I think, really smart to use that function, to use that feature, because it's available, it's information that's out there, you can do it. But then again, well, sometimes it looks really smart, and sometimes, well, it just breaks down on you because you, it turns out you forgot something, or you've been outsmarted. The same thing happens with resupplies. For these kind of races, people use gas stations a lot because they're relatively small. They carry a lot of ready to consume food and drinks and whatever. But a gas station that's open for 24 hours generally doesn't have its shop open for 24 hours. It means that you can pay with your card or with your credit card or whatever. So you can get gas for 24 hours, but you cannot get food for 24 hours. And if you have prepared for a resupply point at a 24-hour gas station somewhere in the middle of the night, then I can tell you for sure it will be closed. And finding those opening hours of the shop, that's, well, I've done it quite a lot, trying to find those opening hours. It's almost impossible because no one really cares. It's just, they say, well, it's a 24-hour gas station. You can get gas here for 24 hours a day. And that's more or less what you're up against. And other things that I personally did experience was a route that I planned that was in Hungary, and I planned it, and I also checked Google Google Maps, Google the satellite views and all that, and it looked fine. And I checked Google Street View, like all the camera looked fine. And then I turned up there, and it appeared that this road had changed to a highway, which was of course off limits for a bike. All the people probably really happy. There was a big sign of the European Union because they sponsored part of it, which was really great. But I couldn't find whether there was a bike path. No one in the area could tell me. And later on, I checked what went wrong or what I could have done better. And it appeared that all the street view photos were, I think they were 8 or 9 years old. So Google had once driven their street view car there, but hadn't updated those photos yet. And I didn't know the area, so I didn't know that it was a highway already. And of course, a lot of the other tools also went through this road. So being flexible, rerouting your route, it's mostly a mental thing, because you have to be. It sucks to be sort of outside of you've prepared, you've planned, and you want things to go as planned, but you have to accept that it doesn't. And very often, it can also lead to really nice things. Last year, I did a race crossing the Alps in the summer in July. And even in the summer in July, it can happen that it's snowing on some of the tops, on the passes in the Alps. And I ended up choosing a route which got 2 of the passes that I needed to cross were closed because of snowfall. And indeed, it was really cold. It was really shitty weather. Luckily, I had prepared my gear, so I wasn't cold, I wasn't too wet, so that was all right. But still, I couldn't continue because the road was closed ahead. So I just took advantage of that time and took a hotel, took a hot shower, had a really good meal, and slept for 2-3 hours. Then I woke up and I heard from the sort of road security guy, hey, we've opened the pass, but it looks like it will be open maybe for an hour and a half, and then it will close. And then I really quickly jumped on the bike and hit it and passed by that pass in that same day. Whereas someone else who was also there sleeping, he didn't get that news, and he just slept there, and it took him like more than a day extra to also pass that place. So it's flexibility, being able to get new information, being able to also accept if you cannot continue, then do something else that's useful. Eat, sleep, rest, heat up. I would say that's really important to do that. And the last thing, I'm also trying to take into account the time a little bit. I think it's time for the last lesson, and then we'll have some more interactive questions. You'll probably want to know lots of different things. The last thing would be to be comfortable. So if you are riding your bike for such a long time, if anything hurts only the slightest bit, I mean, you can sustain a certain a pain point or irritation for an hour, maybe for 2 hours, maybe even for 3 hours, but you cannot sustain that for days on end. That's just impossible. Those are actually also to a large extent the things that make people quit these races. They have something that hurts, and it's generally it's knees, it's their behind, it's their hands, it's their neck, something that hurts, and it gets worse, and they cannot find a way to work around it or to treat it or to cycle with it, and it just gets worse, and that makes them step off the bike and quit these races. So be comfortable. I think being uncomfortable or feeling uncomfortable, and that extends definitely into real life, feeling uncomfortable, also feeling the slightest bit of uncomfortability, that's already an early warning sign that you should do something. You should change something, because you cannot sustain that behavior. And whether that's in a relationship, whether that's in a partnership with people that you work with, whether that's with customers, I would say if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel uncomfortable going somewhere, if you feel uncomfortable engaging with someone, you should first resolve that before you can continue in that relationship, whether it's a personal or business relationship. That's something that you should examine, or you should resolve, or you should do something about it. Maybe it's in yourself, maybe it's in the other person, maybe it's in the interaction between the two of you. Of course, you don't need to be friends with everyone. You don't need to be friends with every piece of equipment that you have on your bike. So, but in the end, if you want to sustain something for that long, you need to be 100% comfortable with the stuff and the equipment, or in your real life with the people and the environment that you're working with or living in. So then that would be my three lessons. So be prepared, be as prepared as you can. Would definitely factor in not only reading stuff, but also talking to people or reading reports from real people. So not just relying on publicly available stuff, but really talking to people that have been there, have been through the experience, been to the area, whatever you're going to do. Be flexible, because things will never turn out the way you planned them to be. And the last one, be comfortable, because if you are not uncomfortable, that's an early warning sign, and you should never ever overlook that. You should treat it as soon as you can.
Great, Bart, thanks very much. That's amazing. Yeah, thanks. So let's just open it straight up for 10-15 minutes. It's time for a few questions or comments. Does anyone want to jump in first? A comment or a question?
Are you allowed to, I believe on the Tour de France, the riders there can take a drip overnight because the body loses more fluid than they can put back in. Can you do that on an ultra race?
No, it's you mean like they take
Saline or whatever, yeah, just a...
Yeah, no, you can't do that. So no outside assistance. And in general, I would say people tend to sleep a lot less. And I would say you do lose a lot of fluid, definitely, and it takes a lot of effort to resupply. You also use a lot of energy. So I've been racing also with a guy, I think he was from the UK as well. He was a medical doctor, and he did a promotional research also in long distance endurance efforts of people and what that meant for their energy household in their bodies. And he calculated and determined that you use roughly 8,000 to 10,000 calories a day. So that's 4 to 5 times what you would normally use in a day. And it just ends up being really difficult to simply even choke down all that food, to really get it in your system. It's already a really hard thing, especially after more than a week.
So would you aim to balance the calories you're using with the intake?
Yeah. So, but then I think almost everyone is losing weight in these events. So you're just burning through your, well, you're mainly in the end your fat reserves.
And are you monitored by GPS or something that someone's not getting on the back of a van, for example?
Yeah, well, there are two things, and in general, especially in the races, you get a GPS tracker that monitors where you are, and that's also for seeing if you don't make shortcuts or getting on a van or a train or whatever. And it's also because it's fun for people at home to see where you are. So that's also like a fun part of it. And I would say it's, well, like you generally cannot win anything. So there's no prize money. There's nothing to gain. I would say the top 10, top 20 of these races, they are more closely monitored. They're also closely monitored by the people at home, like saying, hey, what's happening? Where are these people going? What are they doing? Someone's traveling fast or long, they're sleeping, they're waiting. What are they, where are they? So there's some comment there on Twitter or Facebook or wherever. But I would say, well, if you want to cheat on a race like this, then, well, what do you gain? Like you get on a train or you get on a moped or whatever, and then you win. And then what? You win nothing because there's no prize money, whatever. And well, you've cheated yourself into winning nothing. I don't think it happens. I know one example of a guy who got expelled from a race for illegal outside assistance. So I think he had his dad along the route taking pictures, And then he was spotted multiple times, like sitting in the car of his dad, like having a can of Coke and so on. So and then, well, this race organizer said, well, that's not what we mean with unsupported. You buy your own stuff. And then he claimed, well, I bought that can of Coke myself and I just drank it there. I said, well, never mind. It's like you have an advantage of your dad being there like every 10, 20, 30 kilometers. That's not what this race is about. It's about self-reliance, about sorting your own stuff out, and not about having a car circling around you like the whole route. Of course, they can come, they can look at you, they can take a picture if you just pass by them once or maybe twice, but not like following you like having a team car follow you as a service.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Anyone else?
Must be a tremendous achievement to finish. It must be a tremendous achievement to finish the race. I mean, I can't imagine riding that far personally.
Yeah, it is. It's a tremendous achievement, and it's also, especially for the tours, I would say the races are really also, you try to really like dive as deep as you can. So go take as little sleep as you can, stop as little as you can, and really like you're pushing it. But I would say the tours are also have like a fun part. Like I did a tour last year in Italy, Mille Miglia. It's 1,600 kilometers, so 1,000 miles. Just like it's a tour across Italy, like the northern part. It's Tuscany, Umbria, lakes, coast, Cinque Terre. It's gorgeous. It's like an everyday.
Famous car race as well.
I was going to say highs and lows. I was going to say presumably finishing is a high, but actually there are probably other highs, right? And I'm wondering about the highs and the lows.
Oh, highs. They're like sunrise is always a high. So if you start riding before sunrise, you start riding sometimes really early in the morning, like 3, 4 o'clock. I've started earlier than that as well. Sometimes you ride through the night if that's your thing. Generally, that's not my thing, but it happens sometimes when you feel good. But having a sunrise, that's always a high. That's always like you've made it through that night. It's like you feel your energies that's coming up simply because of the sun. Like nothing, if nothing else happens, that's a high.
Yeah.
And I would say like they're like in general, it's not like maybe a moment, but it's like in the first breakout session, Alan asked me like, why do you do this? Do you want to get away from your wife? Is it more or less like I summarized the question. He asked a lot more politely than I say it right now. But
I want to we've got about 5 minutes. So I want to let everyone else come in if they want to. Alan, Sally, Jacek, do you want to jump in with anything, a comment or a question? Quick question.
I've got a quick question. So some of the things you've described, Bart, sound like the very early days of races like the Tour de France, where the cyclists used to stop off at the cafe and have an espresso and a croissant and then keep going. Do any of the modern day professional cyclists, have any of them, to your knowledge, completed one of these ultras? Because the difference between being self-sustaining and having that whole industry around you must be huge.
Yeah, as far as I know, but probably there are people and things happening that I don't know of. So it's as far as I know, a few former pros have gone into it, and in general, you see them failing. You see them bailing out on the third learning that I had, to if you feel uncomfortable, you should do something about it. Generally, and I'm generalizing, so it's probably there will be examples that don't fit this generalization, but pros are used to a high level of comfort, of support, of mechanics, of physiotherapists, of doctors, and so on. And they're also used to pushing themselves beyond comfort. So they're trained, that's professional sports. You push yourself beyond comfort, and in a limited period of time you can do that, and thereby you can achieve the gold medal, first place, whatever you're aiming for. And if you see people like that joining these kind of events, generally they start off really fast, like they're the leading rider in the first or the second day, and then they have to bail out because they either have a saddle sore, or they have a knee that's hurting, or they have their neck that's hurting, or something that they probably got uncomfortable with already from the beginning, but have learned themselves to ignore or to push away. So in general, you
Right.
see them really struggling with that part. And of course, there are avid cyclists, so they are leading the pack in the beginning for sure.
Cool.
Bart?
Alan, do you want to come in? Sorry, Alan, then Jacek, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Got one question for you, Bart. Can you tell us a little bit how you're training to be able to cycle 1,000 kilometers? I mean, it's a long distance. I mean, how do you train up to be able to do this? If I look at all of us, I mean, I'm not in the shape to do this, and I was just spelling to 1,000. I mean, I got sweaty hands.
Well,
so. Yeah, go ahead,
the big advantage I would say is that it's not about speed. So it's not about riding fast. It's more about staying on the bike. So that being comfortable is more important than being fast. Of course, when you're riding, it helps if you can do that a little bit better. But as soon as you start riding, you'll get faster anyway. So it's the most practical advice I would give is to there's this organization. It's called Brevet Randonneur Mondiaux, I think, BRM. It's a French organization. They have local representatives in most countries. I think in the UK it's called Audax UK, so Audax UK. They organize long distance cycling tours. Generally, they organize 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers, 400 kilometers, and 600 kilometers. They tend to be pretty well organized. There's always tons of people there that can help you out. I mean, if you do 200 kilometers with a group, people will help you. They will give you advice. You ride in groups. You have like tons of time talking to these people. You'll end up meeting people that have done Paris-Brest-Paris, which is a famous 1,200 kilometer cycling tour. You will meet people who have done London, Edinburgh, London, which is 1,400 kilometers. Up and down to Edinburgh from London, and that will learn you both for yourself. Like if you can do 200, 300, you will ride through the night for once. Like so gradually build that up and learn from the people that actually do it already or have done it more than that before. That would be my main advice. And another thing is, if it's not your thing, if you don't like it, if you say, well, I've tried 200 and I really hate it, I mean, don't do it. It's not like you need to do this or copy it. I do it because I like it. It's if you don't, please don't.
Sure.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks. Thanks for that question, Alan. Jacek, did you want to come in?
I actually, Alan asked my 2 questions.
Okay.
And
Actually, we're coming.
I
Go on, Jacek.
only had a prerequisite to this discussion, which is that my record is 550 kilometers, not 1,000.
Yeah.
So everything above 100 is just amazing for me.
Impressive.
And I simply wanted to ask and okay, one more thing. My BMI is over 30. What is yours, Bart, by the way?
Ooh,
And
so-
how tall are you?
So I'm.
Your nation is the tallest nation in the world.
Yeah, I'm 1 meter and 85 centimeters, so 185 centimeters, and I
Wow.
think I'm a little bit on the heavy side for myself now, so I'm weighing like 82 kilos. Generally, when I'm sort of preparing for cycling, I'm somewhere in between 75 and 80 kilos.
And how, I didn't get it during your speech. How much time do you spend a day during those long races? Let's say, is it 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day?
If you want to be the winner, you should spend roughly 18 hours per 24 hours on your bike. And I think for short.
How long? For a week or so?
No, for the shorter events, I would say it's for 3-4 days. If you take the longer events, like the transcontinental race, that takes, I think the winner takes like 9 or 10 days. And winner would ride 16 to 17 hours of moving time every 24 hours. And that's the average. Generally, the winners start with riding 24 hours straight.
And how much weight can you lose? I'm interested in that question about, you said about what you're losing weight. How much weight can you really lose?
Yeah, I lost the most weight I've lost is 4 kilos.
That's not bad.
Oh,
That's in a week.
I really want to. We're sort of quite pretty much at the end of the time, but I really want to say that I'm quite a keen cyclist. I've done 50 to 100k days. The day I did my longest day, I think it was 90k. I promise the last 10, 20k, I was getting faster. My adrenaline was running. I was on a high, and I felt like I could keep going forever. And I wondered what that was about. I wonder if you have any insight into that. Like this feeling of like I've gone so far today. I'm into the rhythm of it now. I'm into the zone of it, and I felt like I was like a different being somehow.
To me, that would be like being in flow or being like in a sort of Zen state. You're sort of like
Yeah,
everything seems to go like the whole movement. You don't have to think about what you're doing anymore. So you need some time and experience on the bike. You need to be comfortable and be at ease with what you're doing. But then on the one hand, you're still awake and alert and sort of scanning the environment, of course, because you want to be safe. But on the other hand, it goes like on a sort of autopilot. And you
yeah.
sort of, well,
You're meditating. It's meditating, isn't it? You're kind of
yeah.
meditative, and you're in a slightly strange, interesting state.
I have a short one, but Bart, if when you're not cycling, let's take heavy winter time in Holland, which is not happening very often. What do you do? Do you skate in the winter time?
No, I do some indoor cycling, so I have an indoor trainer as
Indoor
well.
cycling, okay.
Yeah, and I can also ride outside in pretty bad weather. So I've been riding outside up to a -6 degrees. Only if it's really icy, like then you will just fall because you'll just slide away. Then I don't ride my bike outside.
Okay, but my son was a exchange student in Finland, in the north, that they would cycle on up to -35.
Yeah, I know. If you have well prepared stuff, you can do that.
There is more than let's say 40. They stop cycling for some reason. I don't understand that. Okay, and my last one is your daily, when you're not cycling and you're running your company, Guru Scan. What is your daily, let's say, routine as far as the physical exercises?
I try to do core strength exercises. I try to do them every day, but it's I don't make that. I make maybe 5 times a week. So I try to do that every day, and I try to be cycling like at least 2 or 3 times a week. That's 2 times shorter and 1 time longer. And longer is already like 100 kilometers is already a longer ride as well. So it doesn't have to be like the extreme rides for every training that you do.
And absolutely, the last one is, do you cycle? Do you commute by cycling?
Oh yeah, but it's so we're cycling like around town like a lot. But my commute now is really short. I think it's like about 1.5 kilometers. So it's.
I thought you maybe live 500 kilometers from your office.
I'm asking because I had a supplier in Finland, and not in Holland, and actually I should say the Netherlands, because you're switched to this name. No, Holland. Yeah. Holland is just Amsterdam, and so on. So he was skating to work. He was skating 15 kilometers a day.
Wow.
Amazing.
To the office. Okay.
I really want to say something quickly about the 3 lessons, because be prepared, be flexible, like not controversial, but be comfortable is kind of controversial when you think of it in terms of applying it to life, right? Because getting out of your comfort zone, you know. So I wonder if anyone else picked up on that. Of the 3 lessons, I was thinking, you know, being comfortable, maybe it's not so easy to apply to life more widely. But
I would turn it around, and I think the lesson in it is to don't ignore the early warning signs. Don't ignore your gut feeling. If something doesn't feel right, look at why. Yeah. Maybe do something about it.
And Bart, I wondered, could you just leave us with one big takeaway, or what's the one big takeaway for you? What's the one big bit of advice that you've learned from all the stuff you've done with the ultra cycling for life or work or exercise?
Yeah, well, for me, it's the biggest one. And actually, Sally put it really well. It's the don't ignore those early warning signs. If you feel uncomfortable, there's something going on, and if you leave that, I don't know, that stone, that little annoying stone in your shoe. If you leave it, it it will stop you in the end. So examine those, be aware of those, and treat them. Do something about it. Examine it, resolve it, whatever you do. Evade it. It's also fine with me if that's your thing for that particular uncomfortability, but do something about it.
Well, thanks very much for coming along. Thanks for your time. That's the end of the formal part of the session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bart.